right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. I am happy you've joined us. Look, what is the worst possible thing that can happen to you on a Friday? The worst possible thing that can happen to anyone, I believe, on a Friday is to all of a sudden get that tickle in your throat. Catching a cold on Friday, it's just wrong. Better to do it on Monday so you can be healed up by the time the next weekend comes up. Anyway, that's what happened to me. So if you hear a scratch in the throat, that's what's going on with that. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. That is the telephone number. We have a lot to talk about on the Chris Salcedo Show today. Not least of which is the goings-on over the weekend. Donald Trump was in rare form. Well, I shouldn't say rare form. He's back into campaign form as he hit the campaign trail in Pennsylvania for this. This is a race I got to be honest with you, I haven't been watching all that closely. I understand that he won the district by 20 points or more, and the Republican that is running there is rather weak. And it should be a slam dunk. So he's pouring a lot of resources into this, and we'll see what happens. But if it goes down as a loss, here it is, heading toward middle of year two, and it'll be the first loss, congressionally speaking, that the Republican Party had suffered if it's a loss, and he may pull it out in the end. Anyway, Trump was in just full-on campaign mode, unapologetically telling things like many of us see it, and it just sent the basket of bias press to the moon. They can't stand it, especially when they themselves are the subjects. I will get into all of this coming up on the Chris Salcedo Show, plus the fallout from the announcement that the president will be meeting with Kim Jong-un sometime before May. That's the allegation anyway. There could be complications that arise from this. We don't know. We shall see. Something that happened when we left. Oh, gee. Hey, pop-up ads. CNBC's pop-up ads. They're wonderful. We left the show on Friday, and these numbers, either we didn't get around to them, or they had just broken as we were getting out of the show. So I wanted to bring these to your attention. Non-farm payrolls increased by 313,000 in February. These are the unemployment numbers. 313,000 jobs, basically. And that was all the experts said, it's only going to add about 200,000. Well, they were only 113,000 off to the downside. So what I'm saying is Trump and his economic team and we the people outperformed job expectations again. 313,000. Now, look, I can't definitively say this. I can't remember Barack Obama ever reaching that for a weekly or a monthly report. That was for the month of February. I cannot remember that type of number. It may have happened scantily during his occupation of the Oval Office, but I can't remember it happening at all during the occupation. So now, the left wing is saying, well, the wages were stagnant, only up by, wage growth was muted. However, the average hourly earnings up 2.6% on an annual basis, 0.2% below expectations. Now, this is after month after month after month after Trump was inaugurated of wage growth. So it took 1 month off, but still up 2.6% year to year. So what does this tell us? Well, this tells us that, number one, people are making more money. Number two, that the basket of bias press, who saw zero wage growth the entire 8 years and didn't complain about it once, about Barack Obama, really can't be trusted to report fairly on this. So that's happening. And these are such fantastic numbers. I had to hold these over from last week. I know many of you have probably already heard this, but it tells us one thing, that the economy is definitely heading in the right direction. Unemployment is at historic lows, in particular in the minority communities. And in the best that the press can come up with to talk about is Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels. That's, as a matter of fact, Maxine Waters, who was, by the way, prominently featured by the president in his speech in Pennsylvania, Maxine Waters said that if Bob Mueller doesn't get Trump, then Stormy Daniels will. They are now hanging their hopes that somehow there was some illegality done when and if the Trump team paid Stormy Daniels to keep quiet about an extramarital affair. And we'll see how that all breaks out. Am I happy about the fact that Donald Trump stepped down on his gorgeous wife, if that turns out to be true? No. But, I am not going to be taking a lecture from the party that propped up Bill Clinton for the last 30 years as some sort of American icon. I'll not be taking lectures from those people. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. This is probably one of the most stupid stories that I've heard in a while. Do you know who Bruno Mars is? Russell, you ever listen to this guy's music? I think Bruno Mars is the name of the band, right? It's not exactly a guy. Bruno Mars received massive amounts of awards in the last Grammys. And what is he, Puerto Rican? Filipino, Jewish heritage? The left wing is so upset that he got all of these awards and what they would consider to be pure minorities didn't get it. That they're accusing Bruno Mars of being a cultural appropriator because he looks black. I'm serious. He looks black and he plays great music. So they're accusing this Puerto Rican, Filipino, Spanish and Jewish heritage mix with cultural appropriation of the black community, the black culture. Well, I've got news for these cats. The black culture that makes money off of music is actually the American culture. It's American. And that's number one. Number two, I can't fathom somebody with enough time on their hands throughout the day that looks at Bruno Mars. By the way, his music is great. I really enjoy his music. He is somewhat of a throwback to the Jackson 5, the old Motown sound. And it's great. And he's winning award after award after award. And because he's so successful, the left-wingers in the entertainment industry say, well, that's really our money. We should be getting that success because he's appropriating our culture. That has got to be the stupidest thing. Well, I shouldn't say that because the next story I'm going to share with you is probably the most stupid thing I've heard in a while. President Obama is now going to be getting involved in Hollywood. President Obama and Michelle Obama will be producing Netflix shows for Netflix. I don't know how many shows can you see talking down the United States of America before that theme gets old. I mean, we just got treated to the 8 years of the Obama soap opera, condemning and bashing this country. I don't know that I need to go to use my Netflix subscription to see that garbage. Speaking of garbage, what's falling out of the sky sometime in the coming days? The Chinese space station, 8.5 tons of it, is falling out of orbit. Guess where it's going to land? Michigan. Yeah, somewhere in Michigan, they're saying. Likely. April 3rd. Experts from aerospace say it will re-enter the Earth's atmosphere April 3rd, give or take a week. Around 10 to 40% of the satellite is expected to survive re-entry. That means, well, let's see, a little over 4 tons, or a little under 4 tons, will come crashing down into Michigan, perhaps into a populated area. Now, I don't know what international law says about this. I'm wondering out loud, because you know how I trust communists. I don't. Excuse me, if this is actually an accident. Just wondering out loud. 281-558-5738. 281-558-KSEV. When we get back, we'll start digging into some of the particulars, shall we say, of, well, Elizabeth Warren actually was making more sense than I'd heard her make in a while. Don't get me wrong, she's still left-wing bozo. But she did make some good points that I'll accentuate, but then she couldn't let the track record go. She couldn't just leave it at that. She had to go and undermine all of her arguments. So that's all coming up, talking about North Korea and such. And your calls, 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. The Attorney General of the great state of Texas, Ken Paxton, coming up this morning. Don't miss it. Talking about illegal immigration illegal aliens voting, and other things. Coming up in the Chris Salcedo Show on the Voice of Texas. Did y'all get that? You should have seen Donald Trump when he was announcing his next election theme in 2020. Hold on again. When you hear him saying exclamation point, he's actually drawing in the air a line with a point at the bottom. He's as if there were a whiteboard or a chalkboard in front of him.
Our new slogan, when we start running in, can you believe it, 2 years from now, is going to be Keep America Great! Exclamation point. Keep America great.
The entire rally was like this. Donald Trump went after left-wing luminaries like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can only do that if we elect people who are going to back our agenda and fight for our values. And that is why we have to defeat Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters, a very low IQ individual.
Wow.
You ever see her? You ever see her? We will impeach him. We will impeach the president. But he hasn't done anything wrong. It doesn't matter. We will impeach him. She's a low IQ individual. You can't help it. She really is. We will impeach him. But you have Maxine Waters, and you have plenty of others.
Yeah, first off, I've always thought Maxine Waters was dumber than a sack of rocks because she's a socialist. This woman has openly talked about, as part of Congress, is socializing private businesses. In my mind, that makes her a complete and utter moron in and of itself. I mean, only an idiot would want to replicate Venezuela. Only a moron would want to be a regime like the Cubans or the Chinese or the Soviet Union. That's Maxine Waters. That's her. Without government, Maxine Waters wouldn't be able to do much of anything. You guys realize this? She really has no marketable skill other than a great line of BS. And so being a con artist doesn't necessarily take much smarts. Donald Trump talks of the North Koreans and the folks over at NBC, in particular, Chuck Todd.
They announced that North Korea, Kim Jong-un, would like to meet with President Trump. No, this doesn't happen. They're saying, oh, well, Obama could have done that. Trust me, he couldn't have done that. He wouldn't have done that. He would not have done it. And by the way, neither would Bush and neither would Clinton.
I've got it about that. I mean, if you examine what Clinton did, if you examine what both Bushes did, what Obama did, Obama basically didn't address North Korea whatsoever. They just went crazy developing nuclear missile technology during his occupation of the Oval Office because Barack Obama, I believe, in his heart of hearts, thought that America deserved it. That America deserved another communist nation armed with nuclear weapons. It was part of our comeuppance in his little mind. But here comes Donald Trump. Out of all of those presidents, the regime in North Korea never once asked for meetings. This time, Kim Jong-un is talking about, now, look, he's a full tilt bozo liar, but he's gone on record talking about denuclearization. He's gone on record talking about, hey, I understand that you in the South and the United States need to continue your military exercises. To my knowledge, that has never been the starting off point with the North Koreans. The North Koreans have said, well, we continue to starve our people. We continue to develop illegal weapons programs. What are you going to give us to stop? That's been their posture. And then every single president that we mentioned before Trump either gave in or ignored North Korea. And it's all been to our peril. And I think Donald Trump touches base on some of this.
And they had their shot, and all they did was nothing. Clinton gave away billions and billions of dollars. And as soon as they made the deal, the following day, they started working on making more nukes, okay? So that's not the great deal.
Yeah, that wasn't a great deal. That was, let us give you billions of taxpayer dollars, and we're not going to check that you're adhering to your deal. And of course, the Clinton administration fell asleep, and then the Bush administration fell asleep, and they just continued to take the money that we were giving them, and they didn't feed their people with it. They just continued to develop nukes.
You ever see the story where it's 1999, I'm on Meet the Press, a show now headed by Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. He's a sleeping son of a bitch, I'll tell you.
Do you guys get the impression that the majority of, well, not the majority, a good deal of this country understands the bias of the press, understands the left-wing bias, and resents them for it? I mean, did you guys hear calling Chuck Todd, who is, I mean, every once in a while he'll ask a tough question of a Democrat, but it's not the norm. He's no Edward R. Murrow. He's no Tim Russert, for sure. I mean, his bias and his adoration and love for the left wing is apparent in all of his broadcasts. MSNBC, I mean, you see his appearances on there. He skews even further left.
And they showed it this morning, 1999, and I'm talking about North Korea. You got to take them out now. And then they have Clinton saying, we are pleased to announce that we have made a deal with North Korea. Well, you know how that deal turned out, right? We gave billions and billions of dollars and lots of other things, and we got nothing.
Yeah, we got nothing, and the North Koreans got themselves functional nuclear weapons, and they're in the process of miniaturizing them and putting on the tip of nuclear missiles. Now, out of everything that you guys just heard, what was the headline for the rest of the press this weekend? Not the history, which was accurate. Not the fact that we're dealing with now a nuclear capable North Korea, courtesy of the mistakes of past administrations. No, that wasn't the news. The big story was the President of the United States referring to Chuck Todd as a sleepy SOB. That became the story. Why? Because Chuck Todd and others like him got their backs all in a tizzy, got their panties in a twist, because a president dared to call them out on something we have desired a president to do for years, on the press's bias. Now, who does Chuck Todd trot out to not only defend his terrible name, but also wag his finger once again at the president for speaking such frank talk? Well, none other than Jeff Flake. We'll hear what he had to say coming up next. Chris Salcedo Show, here on the Voice of Texas. Welcome back, everybody. The Chris Salcedo Show. Hour 2 is underway. Coming up, we'll talk to the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, about a veritable smorgasbord of topics and information, not least of which illegal aliens voting in the state of Texas. We'll ask him if he's doing anything about it. We found out about this last week. Remember J. Christian Adams talking with Tucker Carlson last week. And the gist of the conversation was, hey, you think it's a problem only in places like California, Illinois, and New York? No, they've got a huge problem as Texas is home to the second most illegals in the country. And they're voting. They're voting. Before I get on to Donald Trump and his calling Chuck Todd an SOB and then the reaction to it, let me get a call in here. Hey, Charlie, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. What's going on? Hello, Charlie. Go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, I just got I want you to define something for me, presidential. I'm just sick and tired of hearing everything. And I don't watch a lot of CNN, but
yeah.
I do during commercials and in mainstream media. You know, President Trump is just not presidential. He has an opportunity to lead. You know, he's not presidential. I want you to compare presidential Trump to presidential Obama, the man that never had no scandals in his office, the man that's never told a lie to the American people, the man that never went around apologizing, you know, for the United States. Just give me a definition, will you please, of presidential, and I'm going to hang up and listen.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. And, you know, Charlie was speaking with tongue in cheek, of course, folks, because you can be a silver-tongued devil like President Obama was. You could be stabbing the dagger into the backs of the American people and sounding so eloquent as you're doing it, which was what President Obama stood for. President Obama, with his paying off of taxpayer money to the number one state sponsor of terrorism, his anti-American rhetoric around the globe, his anti-Christian rhetoric, his anti-Jewish rhetoric. And as a matter of fact, it is of rhetoric that I'm going to be speaking of here in a minute. But what Charlie was talking about is, Donald Trump's not presidential. It's style points. That's all. That's what they're looking at. Now, if he did speak like traditional presidents, do you think that he would be respected and that he would be given credit for what he's been doing? Of course not. Because as we mentioned earlier, the basket of biased press is that. They're biased. President Bush spoke to the best of his ability anyway, presidential. But they referred to him as a dolt and a dotard and an idiot. The very same Democrats who are now saying, gosh, I wish we had Bush back. So it shows you how disingenuous they are. You know what? I've seen a lot of folks, the Never Trump movement, a lot of folks on the left just go crazy over Donald Trump's words. Now, forget about the actions. He never gets any credit for the actions, but his words just drive them up a wall. And nothing is closer to that than when you hear Donald Trump talking about Chuck Todd as he's talking about getting credit for North Korea.
And billions of dollars. And as soon as they made the deal, the following day, they started working on making more nukes, okay? So that's not the great deal. You ever see the story where it's 1999, I'm on Meet the Press, a show now headed by Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. He's a sleeping son of a bitch, I'll tell you.
Wow. Now, look, as you guys can gauge from the reaction of the crowd, the biased press is reviled, and it's earned it. I remember the days when the press was revered because the press used to have its main guidepost as telling the truth, regardless of standing up for we the people. But so many people now understand that not due in any small part to what we contribute here on Talk Radio. I mean, we have busted open the narrative. We have told people and shown and demonstrated to people how the biased press treats conservatives as opposed to the way they treat Democrats and liberals. Case in point, Roy Moore. Roy Moore, we have had to apologize and be berated when Roy Moore was running. There wasn't a Republican or a conservative that didn't have to be questioned about Roy Moore's antics and how can you do this? And well, Donald Trump as well. How can you do that? How can you accept these people? But the minute there are issues on the Democrat side, Louis Farrakhan, no fewer than 6 members of the Congressional Black Communists have relationships with Louis Farrakhan, a Jew hater, an anti-Semite, an American-hating, Jew-hating anti-Semite. And that's okay. Not one of these Democrats have to answer for Louis Farrakhan. And the fact that the vice chair of the Democrat National Committee refuses to cut his ties with the Nation of Islam, who, by the way, Keith Ellison is also a racist, bigot, a Jew-hating person. But no other Democrat has to answer for these people. So you heard the boos at Chuck Todd, and you understand that the American people get their bias. How come every single Republican has to answer for Roy Moore and no Democrat has to answer for Ellison, the members of the Congressional Black Communists, or Farrakhan? It's a double standard. And so many people recognize that now. And that's why when Donald Trump calls sleepy Chuck Todd an SOB, why it resonates. Plain and simple. Now, what does Chuck Todd do in response? Well, he brings on a Trump basher, an alleged Republican by the name of Jeff Flake. And Jeff Flake says the following.
Earlier this morning, I spoke with Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, and I began by asking him about the president's rally last night and Mr. Trump's kind words for Kim Jong-un and his harsh words for the press.
Yeah, kind words for Kim Jong-un and harsh words for the press. Yeah, okay. What have you people on the press been saying during the era of Obama? Did any of you have any harsh words for Kim Jong-un? No, because President Obama didn't wish it, did he? Chuck Todd, you knew and understood, as did your network, as did CNN, that if you applied any pressure and told the world what a butcher Kim Jong-un was and that he was developing nuclear weapons to annihilate U.S. cities, that you would put pressure on Obama and he would have to do something. And you knew he wasn't prepared to do anything. So why make him look bad? Isn't that right, Chuck Todd? Why make President Obama look bad? You wouldn't want to be accused of being a racist like so many of you have accused us for being critical of President Obama, his policies, and his inaction. What a hypocrite Chuck Todd is. Not only is he sleepy, he's a massive hypocrite.
I don't know where to start. I mean, on this free press thing, he's done this before. He referred to the press as the enemy of the people.
Yeah, you know about that. So Donald Trump referred to the press as the enemy of the people, but Barack Obama captured the press's phone records illegally. And Barack Obama prosecuted, along with Eric Holder, or tried to prosecute journalists for doing their job. He and Eric Holder teamed up to not only go after James Rosen of Fox News, but his parents. But his parents as well. Oh, yes, but this was okay, right, Chuck Todd? Because the great Barack Obama did it. How many of you folks bent over for President Obama when he didn't just have rhetoric for you, actually acted? It's disingenuous. So and by the way, here's Jeff Flake. He called the press this, he called the press that. Where was Jeff Flake when President Obama was violating the law to illegally target the press? I don't recall Jeff Flake being anywhere around. Do you? No.
He stood next to Duterte, as Duterte referred to the press as spies, and laughed. And it has an effect. Words matter. We have a record number of journalists being jailed overseas. some on false news charges, echoing the phrases that he uses. So I don't think it's a responsible thing to do. I really don't.
Yeah, so dictators are jailing journalists courtesy of Donald Trump's rhetoric. I mean, how much of a colossal idiot do you have to be to believe that these despots that are jailing journalists wouldn't be doing it anyway? Jeff Flake, you're disingenuous and you're a liar, and we're going to prove more of it coming up next. Chris Salcedo Show here on The Voice. Welcome back, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show. Glad you have tuned in. We'll get back to your calls here in mere moments. Meantime, I want to bring on somebody we all know, the Attorney General of the great state of Texas, Ken Paxton. Attorney General, welcome back to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
A couple of things I want to touch base with you on. I don't know if you know this, but over on the Fox News channel, Tucker Carlson last week had J. Christian Adams on. And basically the subject matter was illegal aliens voting. We all know about California making it easy for them to do this. We all know about Illinois' attempts to basically let illegal aliens weigh in at the ballot box. But according to J. Christian Adams and to Tucker Carlson, it's plaguing us here in the great state of Texas. Are you aware of this?
Yeah, no doubt about it. We've had numerous instances of voter fraud just in the last couple of months that we pursued. One in Dallas County, where we had over 700 fraudulent absentee ballots. There was an arrest on that one. We also had in Starr County, there's the DA, Omar Escobar, arrested 7 people for voter fraud. And then we also had indictments that my office is pursuing in Nueces counties with 3 individuals. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I have very limited resources. I'm encouraging the legislature in the next session to give me more resources, because if I have more resources, we're going to find more voter fraud and go after it.
Right. And again, it's not like we here in the great state of Texas aren't trying to throw up roadblocks. California, of course, as I mentioned, ushering in illegal aliens to the voting booth, as is Illinois and New York and other states. I reported on this back when I was doing news at CBS 11 and TXA 21 in Dallas, Fort Worth. I had reported on the fact that there were government checks for everything that qualified you to vote except your citizenship. The only thing that we have to guard against illegals voting is a checked box on a voter registration form. And I'm sorry, Attorney General, our political opposition works very hard to keep it that way. Is there any chance that we have here in the great state of Texas of letting government check for citizenship before somebody's allowed to vote?
Sure. I think that the legislature can take care of that in any session they want to, because they're the ones that determine how voting is done in each state. And as you know, obviously, you know how that goes. We do something like we get sued, we have to go defend it. But there's no reason we shouldn't be able to prevent fraud and stopping non-citizens from voting in our elections.
If I was going to ask you about, since you've been looking into this, is illegal alien voting in the United States, or not in the United States, but in the state of Texas, if I was going to classify it as a small problem, a medium problem, or a huge problem, what would you say?
I would say we are actually investigating that right now. I think it's at least a moderate problem. It may be a huge problem.
Okay. Attorney General Ken Paxton, our guest right now here on the Chris Salcedo Show. I also wanted to circle back to something that you and 19 other attorneys general have started, which is suing to get Obamacare declared unconstitutional because the individual mandate is now gone. And that was the pretext that Chief Justice Roberts had given to calling Obamacare a tax. Now that that's gone, it should be ruled unconstitutional. Can you give folks an update on how long and how many courts this has to wind through before it gets finally decided in the Supreme Court?
Yeah, and what actually happened, Congress passed the tax reform bill in December, and they eliminated the penalty for not following the individual mandate. In other words, Congress ordered everybody to have health insurance, which they can't do, but Justice Roberts found a way for them to do it by calling it a tax. Well, the tax is eliminated, and so now we believe the individual mandate should be struck down. Obviously, we're in district court now in Wichita Falls. I think there's a decent chance that'll get pretty quickly to the U.S. Supreme Court. I would not be surprised at all for it to go through district court, Fifth Circuit, and then ultimately to the U.S. Supreme Court, with Roberts again being the deciding vote on whether we get to keep Obamacare.
Right. And what's the timetable looking like? Could it be before the election?
I would be surprised if the U.S. Supreme Court did it that fast, because it always takes a while to get through the Fifth Circuit. And I would say more like probably next spring.
All right. That's good. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, by the way, the Attorney General of the state of Texas, our guest right now here on the Chris Salcedo Show. This has made national news. A judge I know, you know very well, a judge by the name of Gallagher here, basically decided he would mete out some punishment in his courtroom. It was if memory serves, it was a child molester who was in front of him, and he was asking him questions, and he ordered the bailiff to shock him because this child molester wasn't giving the court the answers that he had deserved. And basically what it was determined is this child molester gets another bite at the apple because of Judge Gallagher's insane behavior. As the Attorney General of the great state of Texas, what do you think about this kind of behavior from this judge?
Well, it almost sounds like we're in another country, like Russia or, somewhere else where they don't have constitutional rights. It's almost unheard of, and it's embarrassing to the state of Texas. And look, he ultimately allowed, because he did that, we now have basically a pedophile who is released and has to be retried, which is really unfortunate. Wow.
And this am I wrong in saying judges should not be meting out shock punishment inside of their courtrooms unless somebody's getting violent, but as a mechanism to enforce proper answering or court decorum? Does that at all have any place inside of a courtroom in Texas?
Absolutely not. I've never heard of a judge going to that level. I mean, certainly if somebody's violent, there's a reason to try to, restrain them, but just because you don't like their answers or they're not answering the right way, it's unheard of in I think in our state, and maybe unheard of in our country. It's an abuse.
Yeah, as I said, it's an embarrassment to the great state of Texas. It's making national news, this Judge Gallagher individual. We'll keep an eye on that. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, sir, as always, a pleasure to welcome you here to the Chris Salcedo Show, and we'll get you on again.
Hey, have a great day.
All right, so
Thanks
there you go,
on.
folks. A little update on illegal aliens voting in the great state of Texas, and that's going to be my question to all of you. How concerned are you guys that illegal aliens could be weighing in on this election? Let me give you guys a bit of a cautionary tale here. The left wing, you see how despondent they are over Donald Trump's election. And the idea that he may win again, they find completely unacceptable. So all of these mechanisms they've put in place to make sure our voting system has no integrity. Let me reiterate what I just told to the Attorney General. When I did reporting on this, did you guys know there are government checks to determine whether or not you're legally sane? There are government checks to determine whether or not you're a felon. There are government checks to determine whether or not you're the proper age to vote. But there are no government checks for your citizenship. None. Zero. Nada. The only check is the check that you put on that box. Is that right? Is that proper? So those who have been engaged in the illegal alien community, those who are felons and those who are not felons, will be voting unless there's something to be done in the individual states to stop them. I'm all for the state of Texas doing something that is concrete to stop illegal aliens from voting. And they will tell you, any registrar that's being truthful will tell you that there is no mechanism other than that checked box that prevents an illegal alien from voting in our elections. None. Zero. Nada. 281-558-5738. 281-558-KSEV. Are you worried at all? We'll get your calls on this, and we've got more calls, I'm sure, on what happened over the weekend. Donald Trump letting it fly at another rally, and, of course, the fallout from the meeting that is supposed to happen before May between the President of the United States and Kim Jong-un, the crazy fat kid in North Korea. Back in a minute. Chris Salcedo Show here on The Voice. Welcome back, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show, 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. So before us this morning, are you concerned at all about illegal aliens voting in this election? That's on the table. I have to tell you, I'm a little concerned. I am concerned because of the dogged determination of the American left. Now, something that was just brought to my attention. Joel Osteen. I didn't watch this weekend. I usually watch Fox News Sunday, and then Joel Osteen's program comes on, and I start getting ready to go to church. So I usually catch the top of his program and the joke, basically, and then tune out and start getting ready to go to church. It is my understanding. Now, look, this is third-hand information. Well, I guess it'd be secondhand information from a decided liberal Democrat who informed me that Joel Osteen said that people that do what I do are the problem. That if we would just stop getting on the talk radio and talking about so much divisive stuff, meaning if we just rolled over, allowed sin to happen unchallenged, whether it be the sin of totalitarian governance, the sin of unconstitutional governance, and even didn't speak up about abortion, which is sin against God, in my opinion. That if we just shut up about it, then everything would be harmonious. And I think, now, if this is true, again, I don't, for those of you who watch Joel Osteen's program, maybe you guys can give me the 411 on this and what was actually said. Again, this is a Democrat telling me. So you've got to take it worth a grain of salt, because there's nothing more than Democrats like more than driving a wedge between the religious community and the conservatives who normally stand up for the religious community. But if this is as advertised, I think there may be something to it. Because if we conservatives just rolled over, where would the conflict be? If we let them tax us into oblivion, if we let them tell us how to live, what to eat, what size of house, how many cars we could drive, there'd be no conflict. If we just let the liberals be in charge and run the country into the dirt, no conflict. They would get massively rich off the government dole, and we would all be, quote unquote, happy. And none of this tension that Joel Osteen reportedly mentioned. Now, again, I've got to say this again, because during the hurricane, there was a lot of bad reporting out there about Joel Osteen and what he did and didn't do about opening up the doors to his megachurch for hurricane flooding survivors. And he got raked over the coals. He got to go on Fox News to clarify this up. So I am perfectly willing to believe that Joel Osteen was taken out of context here, or that, because I don't see Joel Osteen saying this. I really don't. Saying that conservatism is the problem. That if we just rolled over for lefties, then there would be no conflict. Everything would be A-OK. I just don't. Now, I know that maybe some Democrats saw this, and that's how they took it. But I just thought it was a very interesting intellectual exercise. That yes, folks, I can tell you right now, if I and Limbaugh and Hannity and Levin and Lance went away tomorrow, I'm sure that everybody would be a lot happier. Well, everybody except for, those who would have no voice, because the left wing believes in drowning out voices that they disagree with. We brought this up earlier in the program, where Jeff Flake and Chuck Todd lamented Donald Trump's language, but didn't have a coarse word for the language that was used by Democrats and by the former occupier of the Oval Office about Republicans for the last in the last administration. Rank hypocrisy. So, as long as you just, what caused all of the consternation was the BS that was being fed when there was a monopoly on news and information. The monopoly on news and information from the big three networks. Whatever they told you, you believed. And they were all singing from the same hymnal. As a matter, well, you know what? Back in the day, there was actually competition between ABC, CBS, and NBC. They actually believed in getting the better stories, the better scoops. And back in the day, before the so-called journalist community sold out to one political party, there was actually good reporting done there that held both parties, I don't want to say equally accountable, but there was a heck of a lot more accountability than there is today. I got to tell you that. But those days are long gone. And it was the creation of alternative media as more and more people just couldn't put their finger on it. Why do I feel like I'm not getting the whole story? Well, it turns out you weren't. And courtesy of programs like this and others, now there are competing ideas. There are competing points of view. And that causes tension, you see. If we just surrendered, what did Reagan say? There's only one sure way to peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. In his time of choosing speech. Now, he was talking about the Soviet Union. We're talking about left-wing extremists, too, inside of the basket of biased press. So if anybody saw the Osteen program and can let me know one way or the other, 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Did he actually say that talk radio was the problem? Let me know. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Speaking of the biased press, Raj Shah had to educate ABC News on how Trump's approach with North Korea was actually producing different results than the approaches taken by Clinton and Bush and Obama. Listen to this.
Okay, so help me understand. The president warned Rex Tillerson, his own Secretary of State, via Twitter in October that, quote, he was wasting his time trying to negotiate with Little Rocket Man. He even said, why would it work now? So let me just ask you that question. Why would it work now? What changed?
Okay, now what changed was that Little Rocket Man actually asked for the meeting. And Little Rocket Man put some ideas that he had not been willing to negotiate on before on the table. Sorry, ABC News, but a North Korean leader hasn't talked about denuclearization before as a leadoff. A North Korean leader has not said, as a leadoff, we will accept South Korea and the United States doing joint military exercises. Any moron would know that's what's changed. Because the North Korean leader, the communist, came to the table and putting stuff on the table that heretofore had not been there. Did this skip your notice, Jonathan Karl?
Well, look, the president has not adopted some of the failed policies we've seen over the last several decades, which is negotiations and concessions out of the gate from the United States. Our policy is pressure. It's pressure from our partners and allies around the world, pressure through the United Nations, pressure through China. These have had an impact, and it's impacted Kim Jong-un's behavior. It's impacted his conduct. So we're hoping that this pressure campaign, which is not going to relent in the coming months, is changing North Korea's behavior.
But the president told his own Secretary of State just a few months ago that it was a waste of time talking to, quote, Little Rocket Man.
Again, Kim Jong-un is the one who's made this offer, made this invitation.
Hello.
We have accepted. We hope that there can be a breakthrough. Eventually, a peaceful resolution is going to involve some level of negotiation. We hope that this is the path toward that.
Yeah, Jonathan Karl, what's changed is the discussion. Before it was all lies and we're unwilling to talk and unwilling to compromise for the North Koreans. Now they're leading off with a compromising position. That's what's changed. How dim do you have to be not to recognize that? Good grief. Oh, wait, we got more on this. Elizabeth Warren talking, the CIA director talking to Fox News, all coming up. It's all surrounding this North Korea business, folks. It's big. It's coming up, the Chris Salcedo Show, third hour on the Voice of Texas. Okay, let's start off this hour with a call. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Raquel, I appreciate you waiting through the news. What's going on?
Thank you so much. I am a liberty-loving Latina.
I love hearing that. Glad to have you on board.
Hey, Chris, my husband and I, we listen to Joel Osteen every Sunday morning at 8 in the morning. We love him. But 2 Sundays ago, he said, you know, when he's so articulate and so nice, and he said that this particular person, a man, he was so upset and so down and so negative because he was listening to talk radio. So this man told Joel Osteen that he was so unhappy all the time that he decided that he didn't want to listen to talk radio anymore, and he became a changed person. He was happier. He was, in a good mood all the time. So I remember that my husband and I, we look at each other, and then I told him, I'm sorry, Joel, I am not going to stop listening to talk radio. And I am not an unhappy person. I just love to be informed.
Yeah,
And,
you know what, and it strikes me, Raquel, that it seems to me, and you know what, some people can't handle what's happening, what's really happening. A lot of people get, and let me be honest with you. Sometimes even I, as the host of this program, get a bit overwhelmed by what's going on out there. Just by turning it off and not looking at it doesn't make it go away. Just by not addressing a problem doesn't make it go away. You have to know what's going on in your world. And I would say to Joel Osteen and to the story that he was telling about talk radio, to the man he was talking about, look, these problems are going to be waiting for you when you get back, if you ever get back, or you're going to be completely surprised when these issues that you want to ignore because they make you upset, when they overtake you.
Yes, so he didn't, the situation was not exactly like this liberal friend of yours told you.
Yeah.
But he mentioned talk radio on making a person very unhappy and negative. Because it was so gloomy and negative.
Well,
So
I've got to say we're pretty sunny here on the program. I mean, we
know.
we laugh a lot, and sometimes through the use of humor, and sometimes through the use of storytelling, and also history, we like to demonstrate how our political adversaries are messing everything up. But again,
yes, and
go ahead,
I
Raquel.
tell you, it is the only way to hear our side of the news or the story, because overwhelmingly the media is negative against Trump. Sometimes I have to turn off even Fox News because it pisses me off the way they talk. It's like they follow the talking points of CNN.
Yeah, well,
why?
Yeah.
No. So I love to listen to talk radio. I love to listen to you and other talk show hosts, and love, of course, Rush Limbaugh. And I learn a lot with you guys, and I am not going to stop, because if we are not informed,
Hey, some people, Raquel, some people like you can handle the truth. Well, you ever watch that movie, A Few Good Men? You can't handle the truth. Well, you know what? Some people can. And you know what, folks? I wouldn't recommend, if you can't handle hearing what's going on, or conflict, or people differing in their points of view, then maybe talk radio isn't for you. If you want to remain blissfully ignorant, then go watch NBC News. They make sure you're blissfully ignorant every single day. Hey, Raquel, thank you very much for the call, lady. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. A liberty-loving Latina right there, ladies and gentlemen. And that's going to do it here for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide on the Vida Television Network. I want to remind everyone that I think I'm one of the few individuals on television who actually allows you to directly interact with me unfiltered live. All you got to do is call AM 700 KSEV 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV from the hours of 7:30 a.m. Eastern until 10 o'clock Eastern, and let your voice be heard. Maybe you don't think we covered something fairly, or maybe you don't think we've covered something enough. It's your chance to weigh in. You can also do so via social media. Go to chrissalcedo.com. All of our contact information is there, or you can do it live in real time during those same hours at Chris Salcedo TX. Even off hours, we respond to Twitter, and it's a good chance, if you make a compelling argument, it'll be featured on the show, if I'm not on the air at the time, the following day. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here on the Vida Television Network. We'll see you next time.